It's really not a rival channel unless I have a Yasuo top gameplay. Today, I have the pleasure of casting a Dzukill top Yasuo gameplay against an Ornn. Dzukill's obviously the EOS top 10 challenger, known for his Yone top, whatever you want to call it. Was originally known for his Yasuo top though. Actually got challenger before on Yasuo top before Yone was even released. Seen a lot more of his success on the Yone top, but today we have the Yone ban, so he's playing Yasuo. His old signature, his old favorite pick, Yasuo top. Going for the Doran's Blade and the pot here. Dzukill's gameplay style is extremely entertaining to me. I'm a massive fan of Dzukill just because the way he plays, extremely micro-mechanical max player. That's actually, you know what? Speaking on that, this gameplay has one of the best 1v1s I think I've ever seen from any player ever. It's just such a joy to watch. The reason I even chose this gameplay was solely because of the 1v1 in it. I'm not going to ruin anything or say anything more, but just like strap in because holy shit, I watched this on stream live last night and I actually like my jaw dropped to the ground. I actually couldn't. And I've seen like heaps of stuff. Like I've been around League since season 3. Like I've seen heaps of shit and like this was just so good to watch. I always find those kind of like early game 1v1s where like people don't really have their items yet and it's kind of like more about your clicks and your spell usage than just out damaging the opponent. I find those really satisfying to watch. So we're going to see, we get to see a beautiful one of those this game. I can't wait to treat you guys. So quickly, I want to touch on the wave state really quickly. Normally, this is a really good window for a cheater recall because he's obviously got the wave pushed in and has a little bit of a window of time here to get a nice base off. Whenever you enter laning phase, you want to kind of like have a meaningful buy in mind. So for example, with Yone and Yasuo, you want to be looking for those Berserker Greaves off the first buy. So in Dzukill's mind, he's like, I don't really have a meaningful buy here. I still have my pot. I still have pretty much full HP. I can definitely still stay in lane. Also, Ornn's kind of like getting a little bit here as well. So the pressure's definitely on the side of the Ornn. We also do see the enemy Graves bot side, so we don't have to worry about anything. But that's still not going to stop Dzukill from wanting to play on a bounce wave state. So right now we've had the wave crash into the towers. He gets a nice little kill on the Ornn there. We've had the wave crash into the tower, and now the wave is bouncing back towards the Yasuo, which obviously does two things. It protects him from ganks and sets him up from ganks. Yasuo with lethal tempo as well wants to play like really long lane where he can look to all in the Ornn on like a big wave or like a big stack of minions, obviously giving him more options to E away. One of Dzukill's many strengths, or probably his most prominent strength that separates him from most players, is his ability to kite around Yasuo and Yone's knockups and obviously playing around the lethal tempo. They lose kind of those like 1v1 sort of like head-to-head stat checks against like most of the other champions. So like your Rivens, if yours, your sets, all those kind of things, just like they press Q and they win the trade. Whereas Yasuo and Yone have to kind of like poke you from afar, like E in, E out, like kind of nullify some of your damage. And then once their lethal tempo is stacked, that's when they can kind of look to all in you. So Dzukill's main gameplay style is he looks to play around those tornadoes. So I think you actually get to see it here. So you see him back off until the brittle, still staying in range, and then he uses the tornado to cancel Ornn's auto there, and then the brittle obviously expires as well. But you can see Ornn still really hurts. Like Yasuo is kind of trading. Ornn's main damage source was just lost then, and Yasuo almost got soloed, like pretty close. Obviously Yasuo was still at a level deficit, but Yasuo had lethal tempo stock, procced and everything. As we see Graves ganking, Graves flash, trade Yasuo flash, Graves flash, no worries. Dzukill will just stand out of range, just let the XP soak a little bit still. As I was saying before, Ornn is definitely not a pushover laner. He can still get solo kills. Like I've died to Ornn's recently. Champion's still pretty nuts. We're going to get that XP and then we're going to look to base. Unfortunately, not quite able to get those Berserker's Greaves off the first buy, but luckily enough for Yasuo and Yone, they have a lot of really nice component items that fit into their build path really well. So Shield Bow obviously is comprised mostly of daggers and longswords, and Berserker's Greaves is comprised of boots and a boots one and a dagger, obviously making his next buy, it's like a 500 buy or something like that, super easy. So his first buy pretty much should always be the Berserker's Greaves. Really quickly as well, I'm just going to say something. I've decided to kind of like go forward just doing laning phase reviews. I feel like there's a lot more to learn about wave state and micro than there is just watching kind of like the map break open and then me kind of like slow casting the rest of the map as people like go and push wave side and just wait for objectives to spawn. Kind of like gets pretty boring, whereas I feel like laning phase is pretty action packed. So I'm just going to be focusing on the laning phase today. Let me know if you enjoyed the entire gameplays, but for today we're just doing the laning phase, specifically waiting for that spicy 1v1. Back on to the topic of component buying. So with Yasuo and Yone, Shield Bow builds out of your longswords, your daggers, all that kind of thing, and your next item, Mortal Reminder, or not your next item, but Mortal Reminder will build out of Zeal eventually as well, which is why Yasuo and Yone build it. One of the biggest things I think, so I've touched on this previously, is how as we have a 50 CS lead to, or not a 50 CS lead, 50 CS count to 28 CS count, is how Yasuo and Yone both like to play kind of like a kitey gameplay style. So obviously I said before, they can't just like face check like a set or anything like that. As we see bot lane die, pretty standard stuff. They have a really kitey gameplay, so you want to be like walking backwards, kiting them with your autos and your Qs until you get a knock up, and then you hit a knock up, and then you hit an auto and a Q, and then walk back again. Something that Dzukill is just unbelievably good at. Obviously has millions of points in both of these champions, so that's the main thing that Zeal and Boots 2 Rush enables him to do, because obviously once you have more movement speed than the enemy, you can outspace them a lot better. So that's why Yasuo and Yone both opt for 2 movement speed items to start with. It really enables the lethal tempo as well, because you can just like kind of walk back, Q them until your lethal tempo is up, and that's when you can really start dishing the DPS. We do see the Yasuo on a kind of long lane wave state again with Diana hovering, so we definitely want to be giving the Ornn that little bit of room to breathe, letting him come back into the Yasuo to allow for a successful gank. Let's see what he decides to do here as Diana hovers the top lane. Diana wants to do this, but I think Dzukill actually, this is really interesting to me, and it kind of just like highlights the way that a challenger player could think. Dzukill doesn't see this gank working. He feels like Ornn will survive. Obviously, Warden's Mail on the side of the Ornn's going to be very tanky. He probably just walk back to his tower. He might lose like half his HP, but maybe a little bit more. Either way, Dzukill recognizes this gank as a failed gank and that it's not going to work. It's going to give Diana's position away. It's going to waste time. It's going to ruin his wave state. So Dzukill would rather just let the wave come back into him. He feels like he might be able to solo the Ornn when the Ornn comes back into the Yasuo here. These sort of wave states for particularly Yasuo and Aurelia are great sort of for combats, because obviously it just gives them more options, more wave movement, more manipulation, all that kind of thing, able to kite out their opponent's abilities. So he hits a nice little blind Q there on the Ornn and the brush. I think we're getting pretty close to that 1v1 that I was talking about before. So you see like Ornn literally just like half HP'd in there. Ooh, very nice. Cancel the Ornn E. Ornn going for the ult here. I'm just going to let you guys watch it. I'm not going to say anything. Such sick spacing, man. Oh, I love it. It's so good because like basically any Yasuo in the world would have died to that 1v1. Like such an unreal. How many tornadoes did he hit on this Ornn? Oh, leave a like for that sort of that's unreal to watch. Like that stuff is the reason I love top lane. It's so 1v1 centric. It's so heated. It's just so good to watch. A big battle of micro, a big battle of macro as well. Obviously, Dzukill's wave manipulation and wave state foresight allows him to do that kind of thing into the Ornn. As you can see, like I said before, Ornn is definitely not a pushover. Ornn just still wins really hard when you just kind of like stat checking them. Even against champions like Riven, Set, all that kind of thing. Once he has armor, those brittle procs really, really hurt. We do see the Syndra and the Diana collapsing on the Ornn here, going to take his jungler's camps away. Yasuo kind of wants to be mindful of his wave state here because that will slow push into the Ornn and deny himself a lot of CS. As we see a nice little pick on the Graves. He should die here. Yep, lovely. So obviously when your top side is open, so you have, in this case we have the Diana invading and the Syndra invading. Syndra has Prio. We want to be invading with them to look for a pick. It's not very common that you get picks like that. Graves really should have respected the 3 Mia. But anyway, he falls. Yeah, that kind of stuff, man. Like, you just don't see it very often, that kind of like micro mastery. Really, really nice to watch. Yeah, as you can see, the game stabilized a little bit more. So 6-3, he's got the... It's actually pretty interesting to me that he goes for the... I think it's called Noon Quiver. I could be wrong. I don't build this item very often. He's got the Noon Quiver here. Normally he goes Zeal. I think he goes Zeal most of the time in Yasuo. Pretty interesting as he dodges a nice little E there. So you can see here, like, this sort of spacing stuff, he manages to half HP Ornn while dodging all of his spells and still outspacing him. That's kind of like the power of having movement speed too. Obviously, Ornn can't get those autos off as easily as he could normally. Yeah, that kind of stuff, just like stuff that Zook, like I try these champions, you know, I want to play them top, they're so much fun. And I just watch him do this and I'm like, oh, this looks like pretty manageable. Like I understand how it works, I can do this. And then I go to do it and I just eat my ass off against some set. Like, you watch him play versus these like really hard matchups and he makes them look like pretty manageable, but then you play against like a set and he hits E and presses Q and you lose 50% of your HP and you're like, I can't even like E now because he just autos me to death. Like there's no room for outplay because I'm not spacing correctly. As Ornn TPs back to the lane. Yeah, Yasuo definitely outscales the Ornn as well. Obviously once Yasuo gets his DPS items, Shield Bow, Death Stance, Infinity Edge, all that kind of thing. He's obviously going to shred through the Ornn once Ornn's rotations are down. He doesn't really do too much more. Just in laning phase, that Yasuo's DPS obviously isn't as high as normal, so he can't deal with the Ornn as proficiently as he would later in the game. Still dodging all of those abilities. So you'll see like just there, Ornn like gets knocked up. He gets like 2 autos and a Q off before the Ornn even hits the ground or can retaliate. Like that sort of stuff's just really, really nice. Something that Dzukill is very, very proficient at doing. It's just really nice to watch. If you guys are, so like specifically, this is like the first, I think one of the first or second E's that he's been hit by all game. And I think if he has even been brittled, I think he got brittled at like level 1. If you guys are wanting to play Yasuo Yone top, you should really take note of kind of like the micro inputs that Dzukill does to make these kind of like picks work top lane, because you won't have much success unless you understand exactly how he like makes this sort of stuff work. It's just not really like, he makes it look easy, is what I'm saying. Like you guys go play against these harder matchups and you're going to find it's a lot easier than what Dzukill makes it. If you can make it work though, obviously Yasuo and Yone are extremely hard scalers. You're going to have a really, really strong top side. If Yasuo and Yone can get to their spikes, like relatively unscathed, they're 0-0-0 with like, 8-9 CS per minute. They're 1-0-1, like whatever. If you can get them to like kind of those points, you're in a pretty good spot for the rest of the game, because these champions are really enabled through top lane once they get ahead. Obviously they can just keep killing the opposing top lane over and over again, or just pushing the wave under the tower like this Yasuo does. And really head towards that 10 CS per minute. So obviously the Ornn can't even lane now, just because of the fact that Yasuo can just clear the wave before Ornn even has an opportunity to do anything. It's also not a bad technique as well when you're against like a caster. If you don't even want to interact with them or like lane against them, you can literally just keep pushing them under the tower. So for example, like my strategy when I verse a Kennen as Renekton is I literally just push them under the tower repeatedly. Like I walk into the wave level 1, Q the wave, just focus on last hitting. The Kennen's going to poke the shit out of me, but I don't really care. As we go for a nice little dive here. Are we diving? Alright, we're waiting for the Herald to hit the tower, I see. Diana taking it nice and slow, very, very smart there, don't need to rush anything. Yeah, as I was saying before, when I play Renekton and I don't want to interact with the enemy champion, I'll literally just Q the wave and like push them under the tower and just force them. Typically with like mages and stuff, they have a really hard time last hitting, or they have to use a resource to last hit. So for example, like a mana or something like that, they have to start hitting the minions and casting their spells. That takes pressure off you because they have to use their mana to start farming. And by the time that they've kind of like come out of farming under the tower, their spells are down, they're kind of like half mana, and you can just start to push them back under the tower again. And then once you have Iron Spike Whip, because you've probably been farming at like a wave to wave, like you just hit 6 minions and keep farming, you're going to be in a really good spot to just keep pushing them under the tower. I think that's actually pretty much, that could qualify as the laning phase over, guys. I hope you enjoyed this game. Go check out Dzukill's stream. It's in the description below. If you like these type of educational content, please leave a like and some feedback. I love to hear from you guys, and I love the little community that we're building here. I hope you enjoyed the video. You guys have a great weekend wherever you are. I love you all so much, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.